welcome back to another episode of the Winner Circle Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Adewole, and today we are diving into the dynamic world of consumer packaged goods, or what you call CPG. We're going to do a special focus on the unique challenges and opportunities that arise from brands, especially Black-owned businesses within this competitive landscape. So today I have Myles Powell, is the visionary founder and the CEO of an innovative clean label frozen food brand that's shaking up the industry with high protein, nutritious options. Apart from that, Miles transitioned from a successful engineering career to forge a path in entrepreneurship. And he's not just doing that, he's doing it with purpose. His brand is not only found in over 750 stores, you know, it's more than that, all over the nation, including major retailers like Whole Foods, Target. One thing that I love about the brand is the fact that it's redefining convenience without compromising on quality, which is one thing we want to see when it comes to product. One thing that sets Miles apart is his commitment to creating meaningful connection within communities, particularly in addressing pressing issues like food, desert through strategic partnership with nonprofit. His expertise in B2B strategies and product development provides invaluable insight for entrepreneurs looking to navigate the complexities of the CPG landscape. So today we'll discuss the specific hurdles that CPG brand faces, or I'll just say brands, a lot of them. So the innovative opportunity that awaits, especially in the clean label frozen food sector, and how a focus on community can lead to transformative growth. So whether you're a budding entrepreneur or you're a seasoned business owner or just curious about the CPG space, I can guarantee you wouldn't want to miss this insight that Miles has to share today. So let's get into the conversation. Welcome to the Winner Circle, Miles.
Thank you, Jay. That was an amazing intro. I really appreciate it. And you said a lot about just industry stuff, so I'm excited to chat.
All right. So Miles, I've had a lot of people come on this show. They switch from a promising career to setting up business. Let's look at your journey from engineering to founding a CPG company. I would say that's very intriguing because engineering is actually a very great industry. It's promising, promise you everything you want. But for you to actually switch to the CPG industry or company is very intriguing. So what initially inspired you to make this transition?
Jay, I remember, so I graduated back in 2012. And honestly, I was really excited to be an engineer and just to make money, be an adult, like all those things coming out of college, right? And my second day on that job, I'm sitting in one of those cubicles with the high walls. This is before remote work was a thing. So everyone's going to the office. I'm sitting there and I remember the clock was like 9:30 in the morning. And I said to myself, wait a minute, I've got to do this for 40 plus years, like the same thing. And it's like my brain short circuited, right? I don't see that being a possibility. And I naturally gravitated towards finding my passion in the kitchen. Because for me growing up, the dinner table was like the place to be. My family cooked. I learned how to cook, and it felt like it was home away from home for me. And so when I could leave work, I would go to the kitchen and cook, right? Just for fun, just to experiment. And that passion just kept developing and developing. And I remember growing up, my parents would always say, if you want to quote unquote make it in life, entrepreneurship is the best path. And originally, I thought to myself, well, I'm an engineer, so I'll eventually start my own engineering firm. The problem was that I didn't like engineering. It paid the bills, but I didn't like it. And so when I developed this food passion, I decided, you know what? Why don't I tie a passion with this desire to be an entrepreneur? And so when I launched this brand, it was very part-time because I needed to pay the bills, but the eventual goal of making the business my actual career.
Making the business your actual career. I like the point you made. Leaving something you love, you're passionate about, something you went to school to study, but now you are working towards something that you love, that when you wake up in the morning, you're really interested in it. But I know that as an experienced engineer, you went to school for maybe 6 years or 4 years
Or, yep.
to gain experiences on how engineering works. So how did that shape your vision or shape the vision for your brand?
Think it was, I realized this later on in life where, I mentioned I didn't like engineering as a craft. Like I didn't enjoy the work, but what I did enjoy was the challenge. And going through engineering school, it taught me how to embrace a challenge because it was very, very hard for me. I'd be with classmates that they just got it, right? It was like natural. For me, it wasn't natural. I hated it. But I remember being so focused on, I'm going to make it no matter what. It molded me into being like, hey, I can take on any challenge. So once I graduated and I was looking for my job, nothing was appealing, right? Nothing was like, oh, I want to do that. But anything that I did became a challenge. And then when I discovered this entrepreneurship route, I mean, that is the ultimate challenge. And I had been so hardened and battered with engineering. I looked at that and said, I think I can do this. And then I ended up going to grad school to get my MBA. And in that classroom, things clicked. It was almost easy. And I said, okay, I found something that actually feels like it's my thing, right? But it was the whole 4-year degree or pursuit of the degree that put me in this position of I thrive off of a challenge, and it's a lot. And the 9 to 5 didn't really seem like a challenge.
Yeah. So you're right about that. Sometimes I feel like 9 to 5, with all due respect to people who are listening who still do 9 to 5, you just do the same thing all over and over again. There's nothing challenging. You can't really create your own path out of it sometimes. So let's talk about the word clean label. You founded a clean label frozen food brand. So now, what does clean label mean to you? And why is it important for your company?
Yeah. So clean label, it is just simple ingredients. And I think our food system, especially in America, has gotten so overcomplicated where you look at that package and it's like 1,000 ingredients, right? And it's something as simple as potato chips. Now, potato chips should be potatoes, oil, salt. Like from a very simple standpoint. But because for years and years, manufacturers have been almost forced to add in all of these chemicals and these things to not only preserve the life of the product, which is a good thing, but also to make it a lot cheaper to make. And that perpetuated for so long, it became the normal. And my angle is, hey, why don't we make food and prepare food like you were at home? Why don't we make food that the body recognizes and is easy to digest and is simple? And so my approach to clean label is the opposite of a complicated food system. It's make food as it should be made, preserve it as it should be preserved, and make it so that the consumer feels comfortable eating it because they go, if I were to make this at home, this is probably how I would make it too.
Thank you so much for that explanation. But if you look at it now, some consumers are still a little bit new to the clean label term. So how would you say preferences has changed in the past few years towards clean label food?
It's funny when you look at consumer preference over the past 20 years. 20 years ago, everyone was calorie counting, right? It was the Atkins diet. It was like, hey, if it's got more than 500 calories, I don't want it. And then it shifted to, okay, I need organic because organic is better. It's come to find out that organic is just a claim. It doesn't really mean much, right? Because you can still do other things in the product. And then it became this obsession with nutrients, right? Which is important, but it got overshadowed by you can have nutrients in your product, but if you fill it with everything else, right, that's fake, still not good for the body. And now you're seeing another shift where consumers are looking at the ingredient label, not the percentages as much. So they'll see saturated fat and go, okay, that's fine. But wow, I can recognize every single line item in the ingredient list. Now I know what I'm putting in my body because now we've seen the negative impacts on like the red dye 40s of the world, right? And now you're seeing the FDA kind of finally step up because in this country, our food system is pretty compromised when you compare it to other developed nations where half the things that we include in our food system is not allowed over there. It's the same reason why if you go to Europe on a Euro trip and eat pasta all day, you still feel okay. Try doing that here, your gut will react in the worst way. So my approach is like, hey, why don't we just be normal? Like as weird as that sounds, like just like cook and eat. Like don't don't have to make things overly complicated. And consumers are now getting hip to that and going, "Oh, this is probably how my food should be."
That's great. Because to be honest with you, I remember a few months ago, I went to Italy and I had a lot of food. And I got back to the United States trying to, I was like, oh, I'm very sure that I'm gonna be like double pounds or maybe like, extra 10 pounds. And again, I'm like, I reduced. I'm like, what? Because I had to work a lot, I'm like, but I ate a lot. I ate a lot in Italy. And I'm surprised that when I got back. So that means the food is actually a factor. And thank you for introducing a clean label brand like the one you have. There's actually now we can now eat cleaner food compared to what we've been eating, because real food is a major problem in the United States.
Yep.
Compared to what we have in other countries.
Exactly.
Now let's talk about your brand a little bit, because I know your brand is in over 750 stores, including my local Whole Foods. So I think after this session I need to go get one. If you look at it, you have like in Whole Food, you have in Target. So what strategies did you implement to achieve that level of distribution?
In my case, it took a long time. Part of that was knowledge in the beginning. You just don't know what you don't know. And the food CPG landscape it's an old industry. And so there is a guidebook in the playbook, but it is not, it's hard for new brands, right? Because so what happens is you launch a product, right? Your initial goal is to get it to smaller retailers. That could be your mom and pops down the street, your small chains in your local neighborhood. You do that in order to kind of build momentum. You want people to learn about the product. You want to have some early data, early sales. From there, you get to a point where you can, you're at this point, you're self-distributing. So you're selling the product to the retailers directly. Once you get to enough retailers, you can go to a distributor that's regional and say, hey, I am selling to 20 stores. I know that you sell the products that you house and warehouse to those stores. I will sell you my product now and you'll distribute it to the stores. And now I have access to all the other stores that you also distribute to. So you kind of build it up from there. And then once you get to a point where you've got 50 or so stores, now you're more approachable to a Whole Foods or to a smaller regional chain because now you've got traction. And for me, that took years, but that's because I didn't know any better, right? I mean, I was probably reaching out to Whole Foods year one and was wondering why they wouldn't call me back because there was nothing there, right? And you got to realize, like all these retailers, they get approached all day, every day with hundreds and
Sure.
hundreds and hundreds of products, right?
Hmm.
It's your goal to show up and just tell them, I'm already in store. I'm selling this amount per week. I know what it takes to work with someone like you. Let's actually do business together.
Right. So that's a great approach. But you said something. You talked about that getting into that industry, the CPG landscape is actually very tough. That's what you said, right? And
Yep.
I'm now taking a look at it in this way as a black-owned business. What unique challenges have you faced in that landscape?
There's been a lot, right? So if you look at one of the biggest issues in this industry is the funding required to grow and scale, right? It's a very cash intensive business because you need capital to make the product, market the product, and sell the product. And very unfortunately is that, black owned businesses, black owned brands, they make up like 1% of the capital that's funded across the country for projects like this. And so a lot of these brands are just underfunded, they're under resourced, and that puts you already a step behind. Number two is lack of education and lack of the attachment to resources. A lot of the big brands come from these areas that have a lot of money and knowledge, right? But let's say you're a small brand coming out of, name a city, right? Name Detroit. You can name anywhere that's not a hub city for this kind of for CPG. You're also a step behind because you're not connected to the right people. I remember one time there was a brand that I knew and they were talking about crowdfunding, which is an act of using your community and your connections to raise money for your business. And I never forget it, his statement was, oh, crowdfunding is very easy. But his story was his neighbor was an attorney making $300,000 a year, wrote him a $10,000 check. If you don't have access to, we don't have access to that typically, right? So it makes it a lot harder. And then, unfortunately, now with this attack on DEI programs, being black owned and being very loud and proud about that when you're coming to a retailer, they're almost afraid, some of them, because they don't want to receive backlash if it looks like they're only bringing you in because you're Black. So the chips are kind of stacked against us right now, and there's a very troubling landscape, which is why I say it's my job to help other founders and provide them the resources that they may not be able to normally access.
All right. And I was going to talk about the, the DEI thing. Times has changed. Things has changed. I don't want to go political, because I know you're an advocate for representation in the CPG industry, and now there's an issue with the DEI issues and all that. So what do you believe can be done to support Black-owned business, even not as a DEI platform, just support Black-owned business?
It starts, I firmly believe in education in this space, right? And one of the things that I like to do is show up and help mentor other Black-owned early stage food companies. Because across my journey, I made so many mistakes because I had no one telling me which way or the other. And so one of the things that I'm doing now is like, hey, I'm opening the doors up to have those conversations with Black-owned brands, not just Black-owned brands, but that's what I'm really passionate about, right? And helping them navigate some of these early hurdles. And then it's also just keeping in mind that because we on shelf, we're less than 1% of what's available, Black-owned brands. So if you know of one and if you enjoy their product, right? I'm not going to say just get them because they're Black-owned, because you got to still have a good product. But if they are, and you want to support their product, that one purchase means a lot more than you think. It's a very key metric. And if you can, and that support alone, leaving a review, talking about it on socials, that stuff is really, really important because there's not a lot of us out there and we need that help from our community.
You're right. It's needed from the community. So now let's push it forward a little bit because I know you emphasize this word a lot, innovation in frozen foods. You talk about frozen foods a lot. So I was just going to ask, what sets your product apart from the traditional frozen food offerings that, you get in stores?
So I want to bring it back to my upbringing, right? So coming up, I was very fortunate that my parents cooked, right? And then I learned how to cook. So frozen food, besides maybe frozen pizza or ice cream, popsicles, right? But from a frozen meal standpoint, very rarely was that allowed in the house. It wasn't until high school, college that I was like, okay, I can start to venture and see what it's like. And especially in college and right after graduating, I remember getting these meals, because you're a busy guy or whatever, you don't have a lot of money, and tasting it and being like, this is gross, right? Like, this ain't food. But I saw that was the standard. Like, it was just the way it was. And I got really, it was like, this can't be right. Why do we have to settle for this like Salisbury steak that I don't even know what it's made out of, right? Like, it's $4, cool, but it tastes horrible. So it became this aisle of sacrifice where you're shopping in the aisle, not because you want to, but because you quote unquote have to. And from when I, in my own home, would make stuff and freeze it and heat it up the next day, I'm like, well, why can't this be how it normally is? And then I looked at the veggie aisle, right? Veggies are just flash frozen and that's it. And they preserve the nutrients and they're actually better than the fresh ones because the fresh ones lose nutrients over time, right? So if you get something that's almost spoiled, you're better off getting the frozen version. And I wanted to mimic how that whole...
Hey, winners, as we continue our journey together today, I want to share something truly special with you. Over the years, I've had the privilege of coaching countless business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, guiding them to achieve breakthrough results and unlocking their full potential. So I'm opening up just 4 slots for my monthly business coaching program. That's right, 4 slots. After being fully booked for the past 3 years, if you're ready to elevate your business with personalized guidance, proven strategy, and a supportive community, I'm here to help you navigate challenges, refine your vision, and achieve your goals. So if you're committed to taking your business to the next level, I want to hear from you. Reach out to me directly at Jay at WinnersCirclePodcast and discuss how we can work together to build the future your business deserves. So don't wait. This is your moment. Join Winner Circle and let's embark on this transformative journey towards success together. And now let's dive back into today's episode.
Subsector of the industry, provided education to why frozen veggies are good for you. And I think frozen meals are still trying to catch up, but the legacy brands have done it that way for so long that there's an educational hurdle, right? And so the biggest comment we get from consumers is, "Wow, I can't believe this is frozen. Like, I can't believe it actually tastes this good." And I'm like, "Yeah, because this is how food should be, even when you freeze it and reheat it." So that's really the movement that we're a part of.
So to follow up on that, how do you ensure that your product remain appealing to a wide range of consumers?
So this is always tricky. I say that because mac and cheese is a very personal item, right? Folks are going to say, "My grandma makes the best mac and cheese." Respect. Or they grew up eating Stouffer's, or they grew up eating Kraft, right? It's like pizza, right? If you ask anyone in the country what's your favorite pizza, you're gonna get a million different answers. And so our mission or our goal is to find the person that grew up eating homemade mac and cheese, right? Because your palate is used to that, and telling them, "Hey, we know it takes some effort to make mac and cheese, right? You don't always have that effort in you, right? We are your next best alternative to what you would normally make at home. We're not here to say we're better than your homemade version, but if you want good mac and cheese that reminds you of home, it's this one." Now, on the flip side, if you got someone that's like, "I grew up for 20 years eating Kraft mac and cheese," it's not our consumer because their palate is used to that flavor profile. I'll give you a parallel. For me, growing up, I ate Prego tomato sauce. 25 years Prego tomato sauce. The moment that I tried real tomato sauce, I was like, "That's nasty." Right? And it shouldn't be that way. But that's just because my palate was used to 25 years of consuming this thing that's not real. And it took me years to get used to the real stuff. Now I can't go back. But needless to say, our consumer is not the Stouffer, is not the Kraft person because that's their brand. They're probably never going to switch.
Right. So looking at your content profile, I see that you talk about your brand aims to create connection within communities. So how do you engage with your customer, base beyond just selling products?
That's something that we're actually still working on, especially since we're now, we relocated here to Dallas. It's finding rooms where you can share a meal together, right? I'm not saying we're making a whole tub of mac and cheese eating off the same pan, but it is, our bowls are individual bowls, but they're designed that you should be able to just take a break and pause and enjoy company of others, right? Like at my other co-working space, there'd be times where we just heat up a couple boxes of mac and cheese and we sit at the table and we just chat, right? Take a break from the chaos, all that stuff. And I think it's that connection that we've lost over the past few years. And yes, it's partially fueled by our need to be busy all the time, right? And so that's why you see people walking and eating, walking and talking on their cell phone, right? But it was those moments for me growing up at the dinner table that allowed for that family connection, right? Those very special moments that you recall later in life. So for me, it's encouraging others to find those moments through our food. And now we're trying to show up in these co-working spaces and all these places where they're super chaotic and just say, "Take a break. Here's a bowl of mac and cheese. Let's just talk, right? Put your phone down and let's just have a moment together," right? That's what we want.
Do you also get feedback, from the community, maybe way back in Virginia? And what feedback have you received from your community that's influenced your business decision in the past years?
That's a good question. We get a wide range of feedback. Some of it is product related. And once again, it's preference. I know some people, I'll be transparent. They're like, "Oh, I didn't really like this one." But then you look at what they do like, and I'm like, I get it, right? Your flavor profile doesn't like this particular flavor profile. Understandable. We always get feedback for what people want to see next, right? Whether it's a different mac and cheese, a different type of product. And so we always file those away for R&D sessions later on. And then we're always, getting feedback on social media about like what we should do, what influences we should work with, all that stuff. So it's funny, man. Feedback is it's helpful, but it's also dangerous because it can, if you get a lot of it, you start chasing. And so you almost have to put a filter on. Like, okay, give me the feedback. I'm gonna file it away. And when I'm ready to figure out this portion of the business, I'm gonna dig back and look at that feedback that I got. But that's what comes with being an open food brand. You're just open to criticism, you're open to suggestions, you're open to the praise as well.
Yes, I agree with you. Feedback is very good for business, but not all feedbacks is good for a particular brand. If the feedback is not in line with your business model, there's no way you can actually, go with the feedback because it's not in your business model. It's a good suggestion, but this is not what we want to do right now. This is not our vision right now. So
Yep.
unfortunately, it's not. So, but and there are also good feedback that actually can actually propel the business to a greater height. So talking about greater height, let's talk about the um the competitive CPG market. So what advice, would you give to other entrepreneurs, looking to differentiate their brand in that world?
It's going to sound harsh, but I tell founders now that when you're first starting out, no one cares about what your product is. Not a single person, right? Because you make this thing and you make it because you think it probably tastes really good. And the wrong assumption is, okay, this tastes awesome. I'm going to put it out in the world and people are going to find it and think, well, this tastes awesome. I agree. And they're going to buy it off the shelf. It's not how it works. You have to figure out, what are you doing for somebody that no one else is doing it for, right? How are you improving their lives? And it could be very specific. It could be very small. Figure that out and how you're going to communicate that to the consumer. And that becomes a part of your brand. And the product becomes a function of that. So when you're thinking of early stage and how you're going to grow, that's how you connect with your audience. And remember, you can't be special to everybody, right? You gotta be very specific about who you're targeting, what their lifestyle is. How do you fit in their lifestyle? Um, what I think you might like, the hardest part is it's almost like a psychological experiment. If you ask a modern consumer, why do you buy what you buy? They may not know. So now you're trying to figure out what they don't even know. And that's why it's very, very challenging to grow a brand, because you're identifying a problem that is not being communicated by the person who has the problem, because they don't even know what it is. Spend a lot of time figuring that out prior to growing your brand, because what will happen is you'll grow this thing and then you'll be out here and you don't really differentiate and you get lost in all the competitive landscape. And now you're kind of working backwards.
That's a very powerful point. In your point, you mentioned about you spoke about communicating their brand to consumers. So how can they effectively communicate their UVP to the consumers? You just mentioned it briefly, but I would love you to go in
Yep.
depthly a little bit about.
It depends on who that person is and what your value proposition is. So I'll give you an example. I'm going to use a brand that I used to buy a lot for our family, Brazzy Bites. Now, Brazzy Bites, they taste good, right? But they were a solution for a either quick on the go breakfast or snack, perfect for the air fryer. So if I know that, I'm going to figure out, well, who's going to benefit the most out of this? Is it the busy adult? Is it the senior person that kind of taking a step away from cooking? Is it the mom that is like, "Hey, I ran out of frozen waffles and I'm late for school. I need something quick," right? And you got to get that specific. And then once you figure that out, well, where does that person consume information? TikTok, Instagram? Is it through suggestions through mom groups, right? And you put your brand where they consume advertisements the most, because you got to realize, as a individual, we're probably faced with over, I would say, 1,000 ads per day, right? Whether it's scrolling, whether it's walking about on billboard, like, your brain is naturally trained to filter out ads because you see them so often. So you have to show up very intentionally over and over again in a particular area that person is actually going to pay attention to. I'll give you an example. A couple years ago, there was a vegan chicken nugget brand that kept showing up on my Facebook feed, right? I saw this ad 10 times in a week. I am not vegan at all, right? And so I had no intention of buying it. But if I ever ran into someone that was vegan, I'd be like, "Hey, have you ever heard of this brand? Because I've seen them a lot recently." Boom. Right. And so it's very hard, but it is definitely just like figuring out where to position yourself to be the most effective at communicating.
All right. Thank you so much for clarifying that. So I know there's one thing that is very important when it comes to business, especially when it comes to the product side, which is called product development. You know, how do you approach product development, especially in creating flavors and options that resonate with diverse demographic?
For me, because it's very personal, I look back in the meals that I had growing up that just felt like a warm hug, right? It was comfort food. It was exciting. It tasted amazing. And then I say, okay, well, can we commercialize that? right? Is it simple enough that I can freeze this thing with very little alterations and make it taste the same after it's reheated? And does that exist in frozen already? Now, our entry into the game was mac and cheese, and there's a lot of mac and cheeses even in the frozen food category. But we differentiated that with like a buffalo chicken, with a Philly steak and cheese. Like we went beyond the traditional mac and cheese itself. But then I look at, well, what is a consumer looking for now, right? That category is ready for innovation. So what other items can we bring that someone's going to walk by and go, huh, never seen that before. And it's going to trigger their willingness to try it. And for me, R&D is very simple in the beginning. I cook it, I freeze it, then weeks later I heat it up and go, did the integrity hold? Did the flavor profile hold? Once we get to that point, now we go into commercialization, which is sending it to our manufacturing partner and going, hey, we're going to make it on a bigger scale. We're going to see what happens when we freeze it for 2 months and reheat it, right? But the first stage is just thinking back to my childhood and saying, what do I wish I could eat if I buy it in frozen, as opposed to having to cook it myself at home?
I agree with the view. Something comforting. So now I just want you to be a little bit of a you're a superhero solving problems. I see like CEOs and founders of business are superheroes because they could be they could be selfish and just focus on themselves and probably get a 9 to 5 and just focus on their family. They have to take the risk of entrepreneurship and decide to say, you know what, I'm just gonna go all in, even if things don't go right, or even if things go wrong. I'm just gonna go all in and make it work out. Spend a lot of money doing research, and sometimes they have to come up with their own personal capital without loans, and they could as well have just been selfish, but they have to use their own talent to bless the world, to make people eat something that they feel more at home when they eat it, or whatever. The iPhone, the communication we're having right now, God bless Riverside, and they make it easy, for us to be able to communicate. Maybe I will have flown, or probably you have flown to New York, saves you a lot of time.
Yep.
Now, as a founder and also a CEO of a brand, what have been your biggest lesson, the one you've learned so far in running a business?
I sort of alluded to it earlier. The biggest lesson is the hardest part is not getting on shelf, it's getting off shelf, meaning getting someone to pick up what you're selling and actually buy it. Because getting on shelf, in the beginning, it seems hard, right? Because you look in all these stores and you're like, oh my God, I don't know who to talk to. How am I going to convince? How am I going to find the manager, the right person? That is a challenge. But I'm telling you, once you get on shelf, it's like getting on shelf is like first base. Getting off shelf is like, rounding second, third, and home, because the competition once you get on shelf is fierce because you're surrounded by other brands and they most likely have a more command of their space than you do. So you're very speck in the dust. And now you're in the space of, well, what do I do to like make myself bigger than I appear? What do I do to get people to want to find me as opposed to stumble across me by accident? That's the biggest lesson I learned, because I didn't care about that at first. And what happened was we'd be on shelf, we'd be there for a while, we wouldn't sell, and then we get kicked off the shelf, right? The manager would be like, hey, you guys aren't selling. This is valuable space. I'm going to replace you. And so knowing that now, I think about that every day. What can we do to get that person who lives in this zip code to say, when they're next time they're shopping, say, oh, I want to find this brand because I heard of them here or I saw them here and I want to try it.
That's very, very important. Very, very important. On shelf. So now let's talk about the operations part of it. What's the biggest lessons you've learned when it comes to operations?
Oof, there's a lot of those too. Okay, here's one. Don't shortchange yourself from a value standpoint. So early on, you run your numbers and you figure out how much it costs to make it. You figure, okay, I need to make some kind of profit on this product. And then you have this price at the end, the price on shelf. And for small founders, a lot of times we're nervous. We're like, well, what's kind of high? I don't think people are going to want to pay for that. So you go, okay, I'm going to drop it down by $1. A little more stomachable. Yes, I sacrifice margin, but at least people will buy it. What happens is the more you grow, the more things come into play and eat away your margin. And the assumption is the more I make, the less it costs to make. Sure, but you don't factor into the distribution cost, the freight cost, all these things that just claw away. And now you've got a product that, yes, it's selling, but you're losing money on it. And now you're stuck because raising prices it's hard, right? Consumers are very weary about raising prices these days. And if you communicate your value enough, you can have a high price point. Think of all the brands that are very expensive that sell because they communicated their value to a particular audience. We all come across items that we're like, I'd never pay that much for that. But there's a line out the door for people buying it. Like for me, the lesson I communicate to myself is if I'm at Starbucks, right? And I don't like, I think their coffee's okay, but I like being able to work in there. So I'll be looking at the menu and I'm like, man, $7 for that thing. And then I'm like, well, for me, it's not worth it. But the person behind me is going to buy it and they can be on their last $10 and they're going to use 7 of that to buy that thing because it is so valuable to them. So as a brand, you got to figure out who is going to look at my price and shrug their shoulders and go, cool, I need it.
Wow. That's more than valuable.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. With all the information you have right now, with all the lessons you've learned so far, I believe you're still going to learn more lessons as, the journey progresses. What advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs who are interested in the CPG space and also they're a little bit hesitant, like, am I sure I really want to go into this field? Maybe the competition is much. I don't think I would really, make anything here because there's a lot of money bags that are going to just kick me out with a lot of marketing and operational cost. So what advice would you give them?
Well, number one is use the resources that are available to you now. Like people like me, other founders, especially Black-owned founders that may have made it to a certain level, and just ask them questions. You can learn a lot from a 30-minute conversation that can save you a lot of pain and headache. And then once again, yes, if you look at CPG and you look at all the mega multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar brands, right? But there is a group of people out there that need what you have, right? And figure that out early. And if this doesn't exist, then you need to pivot, right? If you make, I don't know, the best frozen carrot cake, right? There's probably a group of people that love carrot cake that are like, listen, if I could find something that tastes like it was fresh out the oven and all I gotta do is put it in the oven for 10 minutes, I'll get that once a month, right? Be very, very specific about your end goal and what you're selling it to and why. But once again, find other founders. Like CPG is yes, it's complicated. Yes, it's old, it's expensive, but it's also a pretty helpful community, right? Because we all young founders understand the struggle. So we're all trying to help each other out.
All right. So are there any resources you would recommend to explore?
Yeah, so there's a Slack channel. It's called Startup CPG. It's got like 12,000 members in it. It's a pretty active channel. So I always recommend people go there, check it out. You can browse through it's free, right? And you can post anonymously if you want to and just get some feedback, things like that. Obviously, LinkedIn, look for other founders, connect with founders, ask questions. And then there is a book. I'm looking at my bookshelf now and trying to find it. It's a CPG book about branding. It is I see it now. It's called Ramping Your Brand.
Your brand.
Excellent book. It really dives into the very simple approach, but marketing your brand, right? How to grow your brand. Like it's tactical, but it just feels when you read it, you're like it's like you just get all these ideas. So it's excellent book. Highly recommended.
All right. So when you talk about marketing your brand, so what has been the biggest lessons you learn about marketing your brand?
Ooh, all right. This is a new lesson for me. I learned this like 6 months ago. And this is my hot take. It's not really a hot take. It's like a lukewarm take. In CPG, you've got this book, and it's an imaginary book, and the book is marketing your product. And you've got chapters on demos, in-store demos, rebate programs, micro influencers, ads, organic social media. Like there's probably like 10 chapters in here. And each chapter has a tactic and how you do it. And most brands have done one or all of the things. Big brands do them all. The issue with that book is that in each chapter, those strategies cost money. Like it doesn't cost a lot to do it like a little bit, but if you want it to be effective, it costs a good deal of money. So as a small brand, you got to look at the appendix. What's that thing that most brands don't do? Or what's the audience that no one's talking? You got to find your niche, right? And the way that you're talking about yourself or showing up that is both cost effective and is not as crowded, because you won't be able to compete doing demos with other brands doing demos or out rebate another big brand or out mic.
I want to take a moment to highlight a fantastic opportunity for you. So if you are eager to elevate your business and gain new insights, I want to say look no further than Point of View Consulting New York. Point of view consulting, they specialize in helping organizations unlock their full potential. They have expert coaching services and they have expert consulting services. Not only will they just work with you, they will work closely with you to identify challenges. They will help you set actionable goals and implement effective strategies for sustainable growth. So here's the exciting part of the story. Point of View Consulting is offering a free consultation for all listeners of the Winner Circle podcast. That's right, no string attached. Plus, for any of their services you choose thereafter, you can enjoy a 30% discount on their service fee when you use the promo code WinnersCirclePodcast. So whatever the thing you want them to do, whether it's change management, operational development, whatever the thing is, the services you want them to do, they're going to give you 30% discount on the service fee if you use the promo code WinnersCirclePodcast. Whether you're a startup laying your foundation or an established business seeking innovative strategies, Point of View Consulting have the expert strategy to guide you every step of the way. I want to say, don't miss out on the chance to gain a fresh perspective and transform your challenges into opportunities. I want you to visit www.pointofviewconsultinginc.com to book your free consultation today. Remember, your business success starts with a fresh perspective. Go ahead and use the code WinnersCirclePodcast and let Point of View Consulting help you thrive. Now let's get back to the show.
Grow influencer, another big brand, right? Because everyone's doing that and they have a lot of bigger budget than you. So what are you going to do that's like, oh, that brand showed up in a very unique way and they're the only ones doing it. And now you've figured out your own lane. I learned that recently because I was frustrated. Because I was like, I'm spending all this money doing these things I'm supposed to do and it's not having an impact. So now we're shifting towards that other category of things that you don't normally see done, but work really well.
All right. So as we begin to round off, it's been interesting. Left to me, I want us to have this for 5 hours. I still have quite a number of questions that's going to benefit our listeners for you. So in terms of B2B strategies, so what would you say has been your most effective approaches or maybe approach in securing retailer partnerships?
One thing that's helped is a mental mind shift of remembering that these retailers, the people behind them, they're people, right? Like in the beginning,
Sure.
you see them as like this like person on the throne that you're trying to appease, right? And you kind of approach it as that and you're kind of nervous. The better approach is when you talk to them, like treat it as almost like an interview. Ask them what their problems are in their category, what they're looking for, what's missing, and just be a human being. Those guys are super busy. Sorry, guys and girls. They're getting 1,000 emails a day. A lot of them are just like robo emails or AI emails. And so they're just flooded, right? Sometimes picking up the phone and talking to them is the best thing. Listen, I get it. Cold calling is not fun because you're just afraid they're going to not care and hang up the phone in your face. But sometimes you talk to someone that's like, they're relieved to hear a voice and to be very human, right? Say, hey, listen, man, I got this product. Would love to get you samples. Even if you're not reviewing, would love your feedback. Boom. At the end of the day, they're going to be happy they're getting free product. And now they remember you because there's a voice and you're not pushing and you're just being a human being. And that's across the board for anything you do as a business. It's like, be human. No one likes being sold to. So don't go in being like, hey, can you sell my product? No, it's like, hey, what's your name? I'm Myles. Let's figure out what you want. Let's figure out what you need. And we go from there.
Right. So it's very, very important to build up that relationship, before you just start selling to them or trying to force them to buy whatever you are trying to sell. So,
Yep.
But when you get to have that relationship, how do you maintain those relationships?
Touch points. One of our early mistakes was not doing that. So we found a retailer, they agreed to bring us in, we sold them product, and then I never talked to that manager again. And a year later, they emailed me, be like, hey, your product's not doing well, so you're off the shelf. And I'm like, whoa. I'm like, whoa, wait, can we figure this out? They're like, no, it's too late. If you establish that relationship, they'll tell you in ahead of time, be like, hey, your product's not doing so well. What can you do to help improve, right? Because then they're gonna have a stake in your success because for them, your success is their success. The more it sells on the shelf, the better they do as well. And so it's just doing check-ins, right? Hey, how are things going? Is there anything I can do to support my presence on your shelf? They love that. And so, yeah, once again, it all comes down to being human, right? You almost want to
Hmm.
establish a network of friendships and then here's the thing too. If they know you, let's say they're at a trade show and they're talking to another buyer friend or someone, they can be like, oh, and they'll ask that person, hey, what's new in your store? I got this brand. It's a really cool founder. It's doing pretty well. Blah blah blah. Boom. Now you're making those connections.
So that connection is very important. Build that relationship. Now that we have AI, it's a big thing, right? Now we have technology, it's a big thing. And CPG is actually a very old industry. So what role do you see technology playing in the future of the CPG industry, especially for company like yours?
So I use it now for a lot of research and helping me find connections. So if I'm looking to develop a report on the frozen food industry, I'll ask ChatGPT to run me a report based on current findings, right? That would take me a long time before, but now I use it for that. If I'm looking for a specific contact at a specific group, I might say, "Hey, I need to find program director at this company. Help me find that person." Boom, boom, boom. Um, or I need help with my presentation, cleaning it up. Here's my presentation. Can you help me tailor it towards a specific audience? Great. I think all of those things are very much needed. I think it's awesome. It helps reduce the time from a founder standpoint. Where it gets tricky is outbound communication because at least at this stage, most of us can tell when the email we get is AI, not a real person. Right. And when we feel that, we hit delete. It's like, you know what I mean? And so you don't want to over rely on sending out mass emails and using AI, right? Bec- especially when it comes to something like buyer relationships, because it kind of, I got mixed feelings. I get its point because you can do more, but man, that human touch point is still super important in this relationship game.
Very important. So what if you look at your brand, in terms of growth and new development launches, what do you see for it in the future?
We're in retail, but our biggest thing now is how do we improve the food in our school systems?
Mm,
And I know a
mm,
lot of that is constrained with budgets, right? And budget cuts. But just like the food in our retail stores, a lot of the food that we're serving these kids is not real food, right? Or there's no nutritional value or it gets pretty bad. And so one of my goals is how do we help be a change to that, right? How can we work with these stakeholders and say, at least use this product to help enhance the nutritional value that you're providing these kids. That's a long-term effect, right? You feed these kids craft for 15 years in the schools, and then once they graduate, they're going to be stuck on that. And now that their health is compromised, so that's one of our biggest goals now is how do we help that food system?
that's actually a big deal. Like if you can actually fill that gap, you're gonna be like a superhero. History is not gonna forget you because you actually are introducing something that's gonna save a lot of kids. Right now, I know way back in the days we have like kids. With all due respect to body shaming, I'm not body shaming anyone, but way back then they had like fit kids and all that. But right now, most kids are, most of the food they eat is not even healthy as much as it is. And when they eat it, it gives them a lot of calories, and before you know it, the weight is overbearing. So I
Yep.
don't want to, I don't want to push that too long before they quote me. And I'm sure my editor should did this, but this is live, so well, it is what it is.
Yeah,
So
man.
yeah, if you could share one key takeaway for our listeners about today's topic, what would it be?
Man, the biggest thing is like if you're gonna do this, number one, it's not easy. Like that goes without saying. This is an industry that the entry barrier is very low, right? Tech is high because tech requires a lot of skill set and it's just a lot, right? Food to start is easy. You just make it, you package it, and you go, here world, I got this thing. That doesn't mean that the industry is easy though. So the biggest thing is we're going to do this, really understand why. What are you trying to get out of this? What's your mission? What's your value proposition? What are you doing that's going to help consumers have a better life? Aside from something that tastes good, which is always subjective. Establish that early. Spend a lot of time figuring that out before you move forward because it's a lot harder to do it on the back end.
All right. Thank you for sharing. Last question. How can the listeners reach out to you if they need one or two, you know, information on how to get into that industry, the CPG
So
industry?
Yeah, so I'm always active on LinkedIn. So, just search Myles Powell LinkedIn, Instagram at Myles Comfort Foods, TikTok as well. But any of those mechanisms for outreach, I monitor all those platforms. So I'm happy to chat.
All right. So thank you so much. I really appreciate. And that's a wrap for another enlightening episode of the Winner Circle podcast. I want to say a big thank you again to Myles Powell for sharing his incredible journey and insight into the CPG landscape.
Jay, it was a pleasure to be here. I love talking this stuff because it helps me vent. It's 10 plus years of things in my head that I need to get out. So.
Yeah, we would love to have you on the show again so we can talk about more about this particular industry and also touch base in other areas that I think you actually give us more knowledge, especially when it comes to clean food. So I want to say, Mao's commitment to innovative and also the clean label frozen food space and also his passion for addressing community issues, like food desert, I must say it is very, very forward thinking entrepreneurship way. We really need this particular line of thought in today's world, and we need more heroes like Miles to come out, to do more. So that's why we encourage at the Winner Circle for more people to do something that's out of the box, be the superhero the world needs. So, and if you also, if you feel inspired by his story, and the possibilities within the CPG market, I will encourage you to connect with Mouse and explore his brand. He already shared his information with us earlier, so you can always reach out to him on LinkedIn and all the platforms. He's going to reply directly, which is great. So, you're not talking to AI because right now we have like AI bot that can actually reply on different platforms for you, which is out of the world, people are already
Yeah,
getting more lazier,
definitely.
so yeah. So, and another thing for my listeners, like if you enjoyed today's episode, I want you to take a quick moment. Make sure you subscribe. Don't just watch the videos and just move. Just try to subscribe. Rate if you're, listening to it on the podcast platform. Also, you can give us a good review about the podcast, or about the particular episode. Because this is what keeps us going, when we get feedback from you, it keeps the podcast going. I really appreciate. And also don't forget to follow us on social media for the latest update and behind the scene content. We are going to start behind the scene content from the fourth episode. So from the fourth season, we'll be doing behind the scene and you can see how Maya Mouse, have fun before we start the show. Probably you can learn one or two things, so it's not just going to be too serious. So if you have any topics or guests you'd like to hear about in the future episode, you can always feel free to reach out and we can always have them. We can always have them on the show. So thank you guys and see you next time. All right, welcome and stay to the Winner Circle. All right, bye.